so we have completed all of our second page of instructions here. We talked about how to load the tool. We also talked about carving your block, carving off the white areas, and leaving all of the areas that you want to be black. And then we cleaned up all of our little rubber pieces when we were done. So that takes us to page 3, which is going to help us get started making our test print. And the first thing we want to do is ink our brayer. Now for this step, there are a couple things you're going to need. You're going to need your brayer, which looks like this. You're also going to need some ink. So you might have a miniature little bottle that looks like this, a squeeze bottle, or you might also have a little cup of ink, and hopefully you have a butter knife that you can use to scoop out your ink. So you're also going to need a surface that you've prepared at home to put your ink on. So remember that at the beginning of the video we created this little surface. So now we're going to roll out our ink onto our inking surface, and I'm going to open this up. Getting the right amount of ink is going to be really important. I'm only getting probably the amount of toothpaste I would put on my toothbrush, so not very much. Now, each person's project is going to be a little bit different. If I have a black background on my project, I'm going to need a lot more ink. But because my background is white, I don't need ink for that. I only need ink for the areas that have remained black. I do need quite a bit of ink for down here. So the first time you use your ink, it's going to take some trial and error to figure out how much is the right amount of ink for your block print. So I'm going to take my brayer and I'm going to start rolling out this ink. Now I want the ink to be nice and even across my roller here, and you're going to notice that it's wavy, and that's showing me that I have highs and lows, kind of like the sand on the bottom of a lake, if you've ever seen how or felt with your toes how it's wavy. So I'm going to change directions back and forth and make a really nice square. And I'm going to keep going back and forth. Still looks pretty wavy here to me, and I can see some waves on here, and I'm going to keep going back and forth until I have a really nice square. Okay, so now I have continued to roll this on here. It looks pretty sparkly now. It doesn't look very wavy, so I think my ink is even all the way across my roller. This square is pretty even as well. So I'm going to use my inked up brayer to ink up my block. Now this is kind of the magical part where you can start to see your work come to play. Now when I put my ink on here, all the areas that are surface level that I did not carve are going to catch the ink. Any area that I carve down will not get the ink. Now the first test print that you do, you might be really disappointed in the way it looks. You might notice there are areas that you wish you had carved. So you can always go back and recarve them. So now I'm going to apply my ink. And I really want to make sure that this is nice and covered. So I'm going to change directions here. I might even grab a little bit more ink here. And already you can see a good idea of what your finished product is going to look like. So now I'm ready to print. This is my test piece of paper. So this is just an extra piece of computer paper I had lying around. I'm just going to test and see what my block looks like. So I'm holding on to the edges here, and I'm going to gently set my block down. Now if it scoots around, it's going to make a double image, and I don't want that. I want it to be nice and flat. I'm going to press down and put pressure on this to make sure that that ink is really soaking in. And I'm pushing down with this part of my hand. I'm pushing, giving it lots of pressure. I want to make sure I go all the way around my border. This is best done standing up so that you can use your body weight to really press down. And I'm going to peek underneath here, and I'm going to notice that my ink looks a little bit speckly under there. I don't want those white speckles, so I'll know that I needed to press a little bit harder, especially on that solid black tabletop area of my drawing. Now I'm going to peel my block away, and I've got a print of my project. Now, for your test print, you can take a look and see areas that you want to fix. So I noticed that I might want maybe a white outline around my little pot here. I might want to, it looks like I had a little piece of rubber stuck to my piece of paper here. So sometimes if we don't clean off our table really well, that can mess up our prints. So that's why we talked about cleaning our table. I might even want to do a couple of lines, texture lines on this tabletop here. So I'm going to go back and add some carving. Now, you're gonna notice that some of your areas that you carved maybe caught a little bit of ink. So these little, I call them zebra stripes that ended up on my project. Some people do not like that, and that will show you where you maybe need to carve down a little bit deeper to get rid of those. However, I really like the look of them. It shows me that this is not just a colored in picture, this is actually a carving, so it gives it a nice carving texture. So I'm gonna leave mine on there, and but it's totally up to you whether you like it or not. Left. Before you go back and carve after doing your test print and fixing up any area you realize you need to fix or change, I'm gonna ask that you wash your block off really good with water. You don't need soap. It should just run under the sink and just maybe use your hands to put a little bit of friction to rinse it off. And then you wanna dry it off really good. And sometimes you have water that's kind of standing in these deep areas here. When you print, if you have water left over on there, that's gonna mess up your print. So that ink is gonna bleed and look really yucky on your paper. So you wanna make sure that you kind of push, if you have paper towels, push those down into there and make sure it's really dry, and maybe wait a few minutes before inking it up and printing. Now, if you're doing this all in one setting, you can just add right on top of what you've already used from earlier. Okay, so now we have learned how to ink our brayer. And we talked about how to make our ink nice and even on our surface, and then we talked about how to ink our block. And you notice that I went multiple directions, and then we were ready to print. So we went ahead and did our test print, which is on this page here, number 8. And we took a look at what we carved and decided what we wanted to fix. We washed and dried and went ahead and fixed what we wanted, and then you can go ahead and print your 5 series. Okay? Now the last thing that you're gonna do is label your prints, and maybe you're gonna share them with somebody. So an artist usually, when they're doing printmaking, will label their artwork. So they will actually count up the total number that they have. So I have a total of 5 prints. My test print doesn't count because I changed it after I tested it. And then you're going to do what's called your edition label. Your edition is your series of prints. And so this was the very first one that I printed. So I'm gonna write 1/5 right here in the corner. And the 1 represents, this is the first one that I printed out of 5. On the right hand side, you're gonna write your artist's signature. And in the middle, in quotations, you're going to write your title. And you're gonna do the same thing for every print, except for the second one that you print. That label is gonna change to I messed mine up. 2/5. This is the second one that I printed out of 5. If you've ever been to a gallery or a shop that sells prints like this, not prints that you could just print out however many you want from a computer, but prints actually from a printmaking carving, you're gonna notice that artists label their artwork this way. And so when you go to buy artwork, if I went and I bought this one, I would know that there are only 5 of these in existence in the world. And so having fewer of them makes your artwork more valuable. Now, if it was 1/2500, then the value of this artwork, because it's not quite as rare, is not as valuable. So that's one of the ways that artists can control the market and the pricing and the value of their artwork. So I'm gonna go ahead and label all of these, and then we'll talk about how to pack up our box. So at the end of your project, you're gonna pack up your box. I've got my box here. I'm gonna open it up, and I'm going to wash and dry my brayer to make sure it's nice and clean, and I'll put it back in this box. I'm going to put whatever blade I was using last back into the handle. So I'm going to loosen this and tighten that back up for the next student to use, and make sure that all my blades are in there. Box that back up. I do not need to put my 5 pieces of paper back in because that's my artwork and I'm going to keep it. You do not need to return your linoleum block. That is also yours to keep. You will need to return your ink, whether you have a little jar like this or whether you have a little tube. Even if your jar is empty and you used all the ink, I would like to get that jar back. And then lastly, you're actually going to include your instructions. So if you could put those back into your box, I will take those back and we can recycle those with another person who rents your box. So that's it. We're going to pack up our box and then you will return your box to school on the date you selected on your reservation form. So I hope you enjoyed your PrintBox and I hope you get another studio box again next month. I hope you had fun making your lino block print and I look forward to seeing you soon. Bye.